which one of these three gentlemen is the real professor turned circus clown. So will the real Charles Boas please stand up?
In 1969 to 1977 in the United States, if you wanted to be a touring circus artist, you didn't come from a circus family, Doc Boas was your key to the magical world of circus.
I was going to Penn State University. On a bulletin board outside of the office, want to be in showbiz? Join the circus.
I was 14 at the time. I'd gone to see Circus Kirk. I had a very dangerous idea about getting an application to join the show.
Saw a job post at the college I was attending. I thought, wow, that would be quite an adventure.
Just kind of show up and it's like, there's all these young people. It just seemed like this is going to be fun.
There are tons of circuses in the past 100 years, so it's really hard to find something that's unique about a circus, but Circus Kirk really was in itself unique, because you had Doc Boas, who was a teacher for years, but a circus fan. But it took a step further. He started his own show and put a spin on it, unlike other shows. He got students and taught them how to run a show.
There was a minister named David Harris, and the two of them cooked up this idea that they could have this youth ministry project sponsored by the Lutheran Church that would be an all-student-run circus.
He was able to present this as a summer youth program. We were not a church show. We didn't preach gospel, but we were showing that in a caring community atmosphere, there are nice people. We aren't all hippies. We aren't all drug users. Fortunately, that's because they didn't check what was going on under the buses at night. We meet at his house, and he says, "Tom, let me show you around." He pointed, well, this, we use for this, and the big top is all rolled up in that. And he said, well, it was really nice meeting you. And I said, thanks. Don't you want to see me do a magic trick or prove that I can do it? And he said, no, I believe you.
I think my parents dropped me off. You don't know what the heck you're getting into and who you're going to run into and what's going to happen. So everybody was equally nervous, I think. And he was just very, very welcoming and very, he was a clown himself.
So basically he just threw me in there and said, all right, get it set up. You're going to be selling tickets. You're going to be, doing this. And he really gave you the responsibility.
I was surprised, I must say, to be hired on as the animal trainer on the strength of the fact that I had been riding horses since I was a small child. And my family always had a dog. But that was about the extent of my experience.
It was Doc Boas. He's looking for a baritone horn player, preferably a college student. And so that's how I got on the show.
It got me a lot of experience, a lot younger than what a lot of people would have had, a lot more responsibilities. I mean, here I am, 17, 18 years old, running a fleet of trucks down the road that had to be there every day. And hey, something breaks down, well, you got to figure out how to get it to the next lot at minimum, or fix it there if you can, on the side of the road, which there was a lot of that.
When you were in his presence, you knew you were in front of someone who had a lot of life experience, certainly with the circus. He knew every aspect of it. There was never hesitation, there was always confidence, and I think that sort of dribbled back to us in any situation. We knew that Doc probably had the answer.
I would say that Doc is a unique, charismatic character that can convince people in the best way to buy into his dreams, to sign on for long hours and hard work, but in a supportive kind of way, where you'll be part of something that's bigger than yourself.
Yeah, people fell deeply in love with him. They fell deeply and just enthralled and entranced, and he could pretty much persuade you to do anything, but he never asked you to do anything evil or bad. He used his powers for good and not for evil.
The most wonderful thing about Doc, he had this idea that if you gave high school and college students a responsibility with some training and encouragement, you would step up and help run this circus.
Doc's legacy in part, I think, is giving people opportunities to be in a circus. Not only did the shows, but we tore down and put up the tents.
And it wasn't like some talent show that maybe other schools had. It was a full-blown tented circus. At one point, it had an elephant, all sorts of other animals. They had a sideshow. It was a full circus.
His circus would travel every day, do 2 shows a day. It would be under a big top. He wanted a full traditional band that would play the songs, the marches and gallops that had been written for circuses at the turn of the century. And I think we were visited constantly by circus fans and model builders they came to hear those old tunes, and they record the band. It got written up in the White Tops magazine and the Little Circus Wagon.
Dad was so interested in doing it in an authentic way, and he had studied all the old masters. I think it kept a lot of traditions alive.
And the whole show was pretty much a love letter to the circus industry.
He wrote a story in a magazine, and he talked about taking his family down to see the Ringling Parade. As the parade went by, he felt himself getting pulled along with it, and his wife had to go get him to come back.
In Mom's version, she's holding her newborn son.
He was doing advance work for several different circuses over the years. Then he did clowning with a small show called Penny Brothers, I know that.
And then we transferred over to Carson and Barnes and spent a couple of years on Carson and Barnes. When Dad was on the road, he was doing press agentry work and booking work. And among that work for a while, he did work for Ringling.
You couldn't resist it. He was the firework that you had to be close to.
You know, we all wanted to please Doc, and he seemed to have confidence that we could do things that we didn't know we could do. Doc sent me to New York one day after the '73 season in the fall. And he said, "Larry, I want you to go to New York and see some folks about sponsoring our show." So I went to New York and went to the public library, got out a book which told me which ad agencies had which accounts then. I found out J. Walter Thompson had the Planters Peanuts account. And first of all, I sort of went into the office and gave him my card and said, "I'd like to see the account executive for Planters Peanuts." So he must have had nothing to do that afternoon. So he saw me. He said, "But you have Mr. Peanut next to an elephant that's bigger than Mr. Peanut. Don't you have a baby elephant so that Mr. Peanut..." And I said, "We can do that." Of course, we didn't have a baby elephant.
He was such a presence on the show. It was his dream that the whole thing came together. The band was cooking and the show was going really well. And he'd come in the back door and he had this big booming voice, and he would start cheering and clapping. And
I remember once somebody from Ringling came, and it was the day we had a straw house, and he was thrilled.
Irvin Feld, Kenneth Feld, and I believe Arnold Bramow came to see our show. And I was in the office, and one of the clowns, I think, somebody came up to the office and said, "Irvin Feld's here, Irvin Feld's here." And I said, "Who's Irvin Feld?" Kenneth gave the show manager his business card, and he framed it, and it was hanging in his trailer. And so that was kind of cool.
A lot of the folks who came to work for us would never have been able to break through into traditional circus life.
I love the circus so much. I applied and was accepted right into my first professional circus, 1972 Hoxie Brothers Circus. I eventually ended up as the director of children's programming for public television, PBS, in Washington, D.C.
Like there's Jeff Gable with Mr. Rogers.
There's an episode where Fred visits Clyde Beta Cole brothers. circus. And he watches Chuckles put on his makeup, and they watch the show, and it was a whole theme week. That all came out of Doc Boas.
He gave us a chance to learn what we were capable of. Because I said, really, everything I needed to be successful, I learned from Doc. 3 things Doc told me to do. But first of all, and every circus person knows this, the first rule is the show must go on. So no matter what happens, you've got to figure out a way to resolve the problem.
We went through a hurricane, sew up the canvas, make sure everything's tight, and put on the show, put another show on that night, tear it all down.
Rule 2, he says, never finger the old man. Don't push the problem upstairs. Solve it yourself. Figure out how to deal with it. And
he always encouraged us to do some critical thinking.
And the third thing, he said, Larry, in this world, there are more rear ends of horses than front ends of horses. And the sooner you realize that and just get on with things, the better off you're going to be. So that pretty much I started as press agent advancement, sort of worked my way up to all kinds of administrative things on the show. And it was a great introduction to life and, living by your wits.
But while I was on the circus, Doc Boas had told me that I should go into public relations. And as it turned out, he was right. Something that I did not set out to do, something that really wasn't even part of my thinking when I was growing up or going to college, and yet somehow I did find my way down that path as he had suggested I should.
I applied to law school eventually, and I wrote my senior thesis in college on laughter. I applied for a pretty prestigious scholarship. When I was interviewing for that scholarship, this older senior federal judge who was part of the panel evaluating me said, "Are you the one who wrote the book on laughter?" And I said, "Well, actually, I was in the circus and I wrote my senior thesis on laughter." And he said, "Give her the scholarship."
I finished a season with a professional show after our show closed, and had a line on a job at another show, been invited to come over, and it was run by Kirk alumni, Jim Judkins.
Oh, Judkins, yeah.
At Carson and Barnes, and he said, "Yeah, we got a place for you, come on over," when the season ended on Circus Girard. And I boiled on over there with my trapeze rig and everything, and arrived to find that their trapeze artist had just fallen and broken her wrist. And I thought, man, this is fortuitous. And it turned out that what Jim really wanted to do was to hire me to drive a tractor trailer.
That's right.
I could perform if I wanted, there was no objection. But trapeze artists are a dime a dozen. A good trucker is hard to find.
I just celebrated 50 years, and I'm still at it actively. My wife and I produce shows, and everything that we do and all those skills all lead back to my formative years on Kirk.
I consider it to have been a transformational experience. You really learn quickly that you're not going to be able to get along if you're not collaborating and cooperating with your other troopers on the show. And they depend on you, you depend on them for all kinds of different things. The last thing you wanted to be known as on Circus Kirk was a slacker. You were more distinguished if you worked hard, you pitched in, you did your job, and whatever else needed to be done along the way. There is a spirit and a camaraderie, I think, that's very helpful.
And it was really a community. He really built a community of people that really became, some professionally and some for just those years in the circus. And I think for all of us, it's had a lifelong impact.
It was definitely an exciting time. You get an experience that not many other people would be having, particularly at that age. I don't know. I just picked up a lot of experience, allowed me to do just about any job that I wanted to go do. I eventually went back to college, became an engineer, and did a lot of engineering work, did a lot of sales work, was able to further expand traveling, did a lot of international traveling, stuff like that. So I think all my initial stuff there with associated with Doc and the different endeavors there, gave me a lot of background that a lot of people wouldn't have.
I ran away from the circus to join a multinational corporation, as I've said many times. And I worked for Eli Lilly pharmaceutical company for 32 years. Every job has been a part-time job after working for the circus. And so, I mean, it was an environment that really, fostered that love of circus, confidence in performance, and I think Doc contributes something very unique and valuable that I don't see anywhere else.
The experience that only Doc could give me with the circus honed my performance to a way that when I went on to other things, they said, how did someone your age do this? Were you, was your family in the business? Blah, blah, blah. No. It's a discipline that there are very few places you could learn it.
What he gave me personally was confidence. When you're with Circus Kirk, you're selling tickets, they're on a roll. There's red ones and blue ones, one is adult, one is child. And you're counting the concessions money at the end of the day, and it's all sticky from cotton candy, and it's just the basics. When somebody says, well, you should join Hoxie's show, it was like, oh, sure, I can do that. And then the same gentleman gave me a call and said, hey, Ringling is sending a show to internationally called the Monte Carlo Circus. And that means they have openings on the red and the blue unit. Do you want to, apply? So I did, and I got on the blue unit, which was fantastic, living on the train. And so once I kind of had my foot in the door, and as the company grew, which it really, really grew, I was on the circus, and then I moved to the ice show when they bought the ice shows. And then from there, they said, do you want to do, be based in the corporate office and start, booking the show. And again, if it wasn't for Doc, wouldn't have happened.
I learned showmanship from Doc Boas. He was a showman like the best in the business, and he had the ability to connect with people one-on-one and draw them in through storytelling.
Now, can everyone see the hole in the platform up here? Do you see the hole? Of course there's no hole in the platform, but thanks for your attention.
I got a letter, a home health care nurse for a family who had a son who had difficulty speaking, but he could understand and he could hear. This young man's favorite television show was Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. They played the episode with Chuckles and Mr. Rogers over and over and over again. I sent him a package of material, the video that he took on his iPhone when they presented it to this young man. You're not going to believe who's written to you. Your pal Chuckles. I mean, that makes it all worthwhile. And that all started with Doc Boas. Everyone needs someone who gives them that first opportunity, who somehow sees a spark of talent, passion, something in you, and just gives you that first opportunity to put your hand and heart to work. Circus Kirk and Doc Boas created the opportunities for all these hundreds of people to have a unique experience. Some of us went on to it professionally and at quite high levels, but even if they didn't, they went on to other very respectable careers and professions. And what keeps bringing us all back together was that life-changing experience that Doc gave us to be on that circus.
You know, I really wanted to do something to go off and perpetuate the circus industry, you know, and doing that with bringing in some new young talent, giving them the opportunity to, you know, experience what it was actually like.
The people who are on that show who went off to do professional work on circuses, it was because they'd learned what it was like to be a professional circus performer on that show, and they could take that out onto professional circuses from there, and that contribution just spreads out over the circus world.
Doc has created hundreds of ambassadors who are out there appreciating, supporting the arts and supporting the circus art wherever they can.
But to teach an aerial act, to teach someone to walk a wire, it's not just a family that was born in the circus like centuries ago or whatever, which is fantastic. But it's a different pool, different talents, maybe a different perspective on things. He opened it up to a whole another generation that didn't really know what it was about to, and that perpetuates the circus.
And he gave people opportunities. I think that survives and that lives on.
So
He gave his heart.
Touched so many lives that would have never known the things that they got from it.
people who were trying to break into show business, it gave them a chance to polish up their act, or at least their ability to be an act.
The nostalgia we have is how that decade and Doc molded our lives and how we've been able to carry that with us. It's remarkable that one person could have that much influence. I mean, not just professionally, but emotionally, psychologically, just influence on their lives.
First of all, he loved the circus. And he loved the traditional circus. And what he did was, he built one. He was a college professor, but he built a circus because he loved it. And it was traditional, 3-ring, moved every day. It was a mud show. And it had a 9-piece band, live band. He wanted to make sure it had a band. He had the greatest sideshow ever. He had the pit show with the snakes, a pony ride. It was a circus, and he built it, and he had the people he knew best as a college professor. He had students who ran it, who performed in it, and who went on to do bigger and better things.
He's one of my favorites, honestly, in the circus world, because I'm going to be a teacher. So I resonate with him a lot. He was a circus fan, I was a circus fan. He went to be a teacher, I'm going to be a teacher. And then he took it one step further. Sadly, I don't think in today's world that would be possible for me, but he did it. So I can look through his life and look through his accomplishments and what he got and what he did and all the lives that he touched and just changed. Not only was he a part of the circus world, he contributed to the circus world by just bringing up all those other performers.
And because he believed in us, we believed in us. We were having the time of our life due to that man.
Which one of these three gentlemen is the real professor turned circus clown? So will the real Charles Boas please stand up?
My name is Charles Boas.
Ladies and gentlemen, Circus Kirk is pleased to be here today as guest of the Lutheran Cluster Group of Churches here in the Sunbury area. This is our second visit to Sunbury. We were here 2 years ago when we played over on Walnut Street on the little grounds that have since been blacktop. We're so small we could only put up half of the tent. But we're out here today. We have the entire show, all 3 rings. For those of ministry project of the Lutheran Church in America through the Central Pennsylvania Synod. We toured Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Maryland, and we got our support camp Moana. There's one right there.